Hey, what's going on? It's Bill Burr, and it's time for another Monday morning podcast for Monday. What would that be? Monday the 18th, February 18th. And we don't have guests on here too often. Lately, more as I've gotten older here. It's starting to lose my mind, and I get self-conscious about you guys listening to me going on and on and on. I do have a special guest. Someone I got to know last year, or maybe a little bit more than a year ago. We did a movie called The Front Runner. Please welcome director extraordinaire Jason Reitman.
Now, I have to admit, this is Jason, as a fan of your podcast, that I am disappointed by myself even being here, because I hate when you have a guest on the podcast. My favorite episodes are the ones that are just you, and you're talking to yourself, and you're your best guest, and you go, "Oh, really, Bill? Yeah," and you like go back and forth. So I'm frustrated with myself being here on your podcast.
Okay. Well, don't worry. This is the thing. My listeners, fortunately, enjoy movies, music, and that type of thing. So when I do have people on, I try not to have just some sort of random person. And I'm having you on not only because I love the movie you made, I'm also in it for a minute. So this is
more than a minute.
So this is also like self-serving here. Mm-hmm.
You're great in the movie. Like, you're genuinely great in the movie, and I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. And you're not only in it for a minute. Like, you have a great
I run down an alley
film.
a couple times.
You have one of the best scenes in the film. You have one of the best scenes in the film, and one of the first things that people ever talk about is the beat where you drop the notepad and they start talking about your scene and your character in it. And I thought you were fantastic.
Oh, I know. And everybody, that was the one thing that people said, like, well, let's just let them know what it's about in case, because God knows there's a million things to watch. Jason directed a movie last year called The Front Runner, which was the Gary Hart story, which I didn't know that up until when he ran for president, that mainstream media, meaning like the New York Times, the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, whatever, like the newspapers that your paperboy delivered, never delved into a political candidate's personal life as far as their affairs or whatever was going on. Even if they knew it was considered beneath them. Right. Scumbag journalism, like National Enquirer level stuff. I had no idea. I guess it was something I never really thought about, like whether they. Because growing up, I felt like the only person who ever did it was JFK, because that's what you always heard about him.
Heard about him, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, but you never heard about anybody else, so I just sort of assumed that, he screwed around. There was a couple of legendary guys that screwed around so much that everybody kind of knew. So I thought that. So I guess I kind of thought that screwing around was sort of a new thing. Right. Or whatever. So,
isn't that how we feel about sex in general? I mean, as we get older, we realize that, that's right, more people are probably pervs than we thought, and more people cheat than we thought. And you go back in history, you go, people have probably been doing these things since the dawn of man.
I remember when I was really young, I was taking drum lessons from this guy, and he was 70 then, and I was like 18 or 19, and I was taking drums. He's an old big band drummer, and he started telling me stories one time. He was like, "Oh yeah," he goes, I knew this woman. She had green eyes, man. She was crazy. I used to bang her in the park up against a tree, and I was like, listen to this shit.
This is back a drum lesson.
I know. Well, we got to know each other after a while. We'd hang out and stuff. So he didn't give a shit. He told me, because I was fascinated with his life, because I wanted to, on some level, it's like, wait, is what I knew? I wanted a fun job, and I knew I loved drums, but I didn't have it. I was like more like dad rock band sort of talent level, but I didn't know that at that point. And I was fascinated because he had lived that life. He went through the whole big band era and all of that, and watched that go away and how he dealt with it and all that stuff. But he used to tell me these stories, and I remember I looked at him like, you did that? Like, what was that? Like the 1930s? Yeah, 1930s, 1940s. I'm like, you did that? And he goes, let me tell you something, kid. He goes, every generation thinks they're the first generation that ever fucked. And I never forgot that.
Well said. I love the wording on that too. That's perfect.
Yeah, but then of course you go back and if you the Romans, Greeks, and all that stuff, you realize it seems like it was like nothing happened. Like nobody had sex between the Romans and the Greeks,
right?
Up until Woodstock,
right?
Is kind of how it goes. So anyway, what's his face? Gary Hart has an affair with Donna Rice, and the Miami Herald decides to cross that line, and ever since then, we now have what we have now, where they just delve into everybody's life and sports now with like social media. I just thought it was just the way you did it. It was just such a great story, considering everything that's happening now. You know, like almost like everything's out there now. To go back and kind of be like, this was sort of like the first, like, I can't even say leak in the dike. This was just the thing that kind of blew it open.
Yeah, no. And by the way, I didn't know this stuff either. I'm not exactly a student of history. I'm a student of movies. I like movies, and I didn't know the story, and I frankly didn't really know who Gary Hart was. You know, I was probably 10 when this happened.
Yeah.
And there was a Radio Lab, not to plug a different podcast, sorry, but
that's all right. I don't care.
Radio Lab.
Listen to Radio Lab, everybody.
Did a piece on this story. Matt Bai had written a book about Gary Hart, and that really was my introduction to the story. And considering everything that we're going through right now, and considering the way that we've kind of thinned the line between what is a private life and what is a public life, I thought the story was fascinating. That there was a moment where, as you just said, his private life was out of bounds. It was considered not only uncouth, but it just wasn't our business. And he was a guy who was actually a great candidate in every other respect. You know, 2-term senator, and was kind of just not only the presumed nominee, but presumed to win. You know, he was like 10 points ahead of George Bush going into the campaign.
And plus, we had just had 8 years of a Republican, so then that's what happens, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's the red tie's fault."
Right.
Then you go 8 years this way, then 8 years that way. So
yeah, and this story kind of broke. So basically, yeah, you're right. Other, you know, people kind of knew about Gary Hart. I think there was kind of presumptions that perhaps he was a womanizer, that perhaps he dated around. You know, he'd been separated from his wife a couple times, and so he had kind of just dated traditionally in D.C. And the Miami Herald.
What does dated traditionally means? He's separated. And
I mean, he was
on
just
dates?
like he wasn't. There was moments where he wasn't married, and he was just kind of going on dates, and so people got a feel for what this guy is like as a bachelor.
This guy crushes it at work. He crushes it outside of work.
He was a handsome guy. I mean, his best friend was Warren Beatty. I mean, you know.
Oh wow, yeah, there you go.
So the Miami Herald gets wind of this, and they followed it up. And when a lot of other newspapers said, you know, we're not gonna cover this, the Miami Herald did, and the American public said, yes, give me more of that. And it coincides with just a lot of things happening simultaneously. You know, it was just a few years before that CNN even like went on the air. They started Crossfire. The satellite van was invented. Current Affair, the first gossip television show, you know, goes on the air. So the, you know, what we think of as, you know, National Enquirer being a print medium, like made it to television.
Right.
And now we're filling a 24-hour news cycle. And the American public said, yeah, that matters to us. We want to hear that.
And that
story.
was also too back then, before the 24-hour news channel. You had time. If some shit was coming out, you at least, you know, if it was 8 a.m, like this fucking story's breaking in 11 hours, we got it, or whatever, 10 hours, we got to do something here. And now you have, like, forget about the 24-hour site. You have social media. And now also the way people post news, there's no alleged. It's like somebody gets accused of something, and then regular people, because they're not in journalism, and I guess there's no libel or anything on the internet. It's just you know, so-and-so accused of this, and then it's like the next, you know, generation of that piece of shit, blah, 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 did this. And, oh, sorry, that's me. My thing. Oh shit! This is the part of the podcast that you enjoy, when I fucking go onto my phone here, and completely abandoned. 175 pounds, we'll say. There we go.
Is this your weigh-in?
No, I'm doing Santa Barbara tonight, and I'm flying the helicopter up with my instructor, and I thought we were only going to get the 2-seater. Now the 4-seater became available, so I'm asking if my buddy can go along. So he just needs to know how many is there going to be and how much he weighs, because it's all weight and balance.
Wait a second. Anytime you rent a helicopter or take a helicopter, you have to admit your weight? Does that fuck with people?
Yeah. You know what? It's funny, because especially in this business with entertainers.
Yeah.
Because I had a buddy of mine, and he goes, and he was sort of fat at the time, fatter than he wanted to be.
Right.
And he goes, dude, I'll be like 190 by the time we fly. I think he was over 2 bills, and he didn't want to admit it. And I just said, dude, this is not a time to lie. So he came back. He's like, 206, but I'm going to be in the 190s by the time we fly. It's like, great, just don't gain any more weight or whatever. And what they do is they'll just adjust like 5 pounds up or something like that, I would think. And
they're moving weight around the helicopter to balance it, left, right, top, bottom,
and then how much fuel you can have. Like there was some kid who was inexperienced or whatever, and he filled up the thing that I was. I'm going to fly the R-44, so it's a 4-passenger. When you have a 4-passenger, I mean, unless you have kids. I haven't flown this thing much. I'm just repeating what people told me. You never fill both tanks up full because you just have too much weight and you won't be able to get lift. And I don't even know how this guy even got into a hover, but somehow he did, and he took off. And then it just becomes this thing where you're just pulling too much power, and you start descending, and then your brain tells you pull more. What you actually want to do is try to level out. What he probably should have done was something called a running landing, which is sort of sliding into second base. Which he did not do, and unfortunately, it didn't end well that day. So that's why he's asking how many more. It's only one. Only one is not a big deal, and also he's like $175, so it won't be a problem. But it will definitely, I would think he wouldn't top off both at this point. But it's not that long a flight.
My DP is a pilot. My cinematographer is a pilot. A lot of my camera crew are pilots.
Right.
And on Up in the Air, which we did with American Airlines, they took the whole camera team down to Dallas at the end of the shoot. And they have, I guess, this warehouse where they have a cockpit simulator for every plane they have in their fleet.
Wow.
And they just start putting them into planes. And these cockpits are real. I mean, they're completely outfitted. They cost millions of dollars.
Right.
And they're so good that if you get certified on the simulator, you are ready to take passengers up in the air. Like, there is no in between. As soon as you're certified on the simulator.
Now, what I don't understand about that is how do they duplicate the feel of whatever you're flying, and how do they duplicate like turbulence? And then not only that, no matter what, you're not going to die in that thing.
Right.
So you've never had to mentally try to keep your shit together.
Well, I'll speak to
that. So I would think you have to go up with somebody. You got to. I don't think they go, all right, buddy.
So
here's your Space Invaders fucking certificate.
Eric says, my cinematographer, Eric, he said he's never sweat more in his life. He said, you forget that it is fake the moment it is happening. Because it's on a gimbal. Wow. The whole thing is shaking the whole time. The whole thing can rotate and move and shake. They got screens all around. So all you see is what you would be normally seeing outside the window.
I got to do that.
And what they did is they were just fucking with them the whole time. So with each one of the guys on my camera team, they would just throw everything at them.
Microbursts.
Yeah, you say, your left engine's out. A bird just went through your other engine. There's a tornado coming. They gave everyone the Sully route to see if they could. No one because everyone was just crashing in the river. And
oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's in Dallas, huh?
Yeah, and then when we were shooting Frontrunner, we were over at Delta, and because Delta's in Atlanta, and I remember on a lunch break, the guys did the same thing.
Is that I missed out. I didn't know this was going down.
They came back from lunch, and Eric his hands were shaking because he said it's so real. You forget that you're in a simulator, and it's terrifying.
Is that right? Well, hopefully somebody listens to this and lets me try to do something like that, because I always ever since like 9/11 with those. The terrorists taking over the planes. You have your Steven Seagal fantasy that you would take them all out. But then in my fantasy, the pilots are also taken out. And then that's where it ends. It's like,
Can you also fly a plane?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. And I don't. And there's a lot of stuff that is involved with it that I don't understand. That does fascinate me as far as their flaps and that type of stuff, as far as like, because the weird thing about aviation is you kind of learn through people fucking up, and most of the time those fuck ups lead to death. And it's just not something that you want to. It's like I'd equate it to like riding a motorcycle, where if you tell the only person you want to talk to about riding a motorcycle is somebody else who rides a motorcycle, because they'll talk about the fun of it and where to go. Anybody else, it's not a matter, it's a matter when, right? Same thing with like aviation, which is not a fair comparison because of how safe it is. I mean, there's always obviously an element of danger every time you do it, but like the just the sheer amount of people that are up there versus down here, there's nobody up there texting, and also the level of training and the level of just communication that goes on when you're up there. I mean, that's what always blows my mind after every flight is when I then go down the highway And, out here, upwards of 6 lanes of breast. And it's just like, I'm literally flying in formation right now on the ground with people. I don't know what their flight plan is.
Right.
I don't know what they're going to do. People are just ignoring the rules, like those people who pass you on the right doing like 90 fucking miles an hour. And you're trying to get off. And I can't tell you how many times I've landed, got in my car, and then got on the highway and seen an accident. That's happened like 4 times.
I saw the craziest accident the other day. I was on the 10, and 2 cars try to merge into the same lane. They both notice each other at the same time, and they don't touch. Their cars never make contact, but they both freak out by how close they are to each other.
Overcorrect, yeah.
And one overcorrects left, goes into the median. The other one overcorrects right, rolls their car across, up into a sign, up onto the dirt. And I'm just behind them, 3/4 between both of them, and just go right between them.
Wow.
It was
An episode of The Fall Guy.
It was like Transformers. It was so crazy, and they never touched each other. It was the freakiest thing. It was like the hand of God. It was. It spooked me for a while after. It was just so strange.
I remember early in my career, I did a road gig with a comic who had broken his hip in a car accident, and he drove like an old lady, and like I was like, what the fuck? And then I started driving, and I could just feel him, how nervous he was. And that was the first time that clicked in my head, the physics of what I was doing. Like, this car's going 80, so am I. You know, I'm going 80 miles an hour. Like, you just don't think it. You're just sitting there cruising along, and all you're gauging is what's in front of you. And, well, it's clear, so it doesn't feel like you're going 80 miles. And, like, I'm going, my body is traveling at a rate that if I was to hit something and stop abruptly, my brain's going to slam against the inside of my skull, and I'm going to be dead. Like, that's just not something that I think, and this happens in aviation, too, when guys get higher and higher hours, is you get that false sense of safety. Like, what I heard in ground school was the most dangerous pilots were the people with very few hours and then people with a ton of hours.
Right. Because
then they would get lazy with their pre-flight, because, they never had an engine failure, it's fine, it's fine. Let's go. Fucking load it up. You're fine. What do you weigh? Fucking $1.60, $1.70. Get in the fucking thing. And, just doing dumb shit,
Why aren't there more? It's funny, when I think about it, there's plenty of stories, horror stories about musicians on the road. So many musicians have died. Plane crashes, car crashes. You just in your mind, I say that, and you can kind of instantly list like 20 of them.
Right.
I don't know the stories about comics, but comics are on the road just as much.
Because we fly commercial. Most of those guys, I think, that died, a lot of those, they were chartering planes. Like the day the music died.
Yeah.
Like that was the whole thing. Let's get that. And all that was, because I remember I played that room, the surf ball room, and I flew into that airport. The whole thing, I was like, geez, you're going to fly into that airport? Like, people get like, they think it's the airport. And it's like, no, what happened was, as far as what I read, was just the technology for de-icing just was not there. So he had the added weight on his wings of the ice, and then also the ice, just the layer of it changes the shape of the wing, which affects your level of lift. And he had those two devastating combinations, and then the end result of that equation was they all died. So, I don't know. I think Leonard Skinner was another one. I think Aerosmith had just chartered that plane, or was going to charter. That was a shit plane.
Do you see they found Aerosmith's original tour van?
No.
Apparently they found
I think I did see
Aerosmith's
that.
like original like tiny tour van with like spray painted on the side or something.
Like, how does that exist for that long so somebody just doesn't... I would just think that whoever bought it had no idea who Aerosmith was.
Right. It says it on the side of the van.
Yeah, and just had it in the back. And like, I don't know if that was a breadcrumb company or what. Like, dude, is that fucking... That should be in like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something.
The sets from 2001 sat in a field forever in England. Like all these old spaceships and spacecraft and things that they built, miniatures, but were just like enormous miniatures. Apparently, were sitting in a field for years in England.
That's what I find fascinating about when I was talking to you when we had the time, when we were doing Front Runner, was talking to you about growing up in this business.
Right.
And when I listened to you talking about movies and movie sets, I was fascinated because you sounded like me the way I talked about sports and football cards and guys who played in old stadiums and that type of stuff. And did your parents ever try to discourage you from getting into this business? I would say that a lot. because I don't think I would do that to my daughter, because I just look at it like this is an incredibly fun business. It's really hard and it's very competitive, but so I think if you're going to try to get to the top of any business, you're going to deal with that same thing. It's not like trying to become the greatest oil man or politics or the best lawyer. I would think that all of that becomes cutthroat the higher up you're going up the mountain. So, I mean, if you're really into this this business, I mean, I just, plus I also don't think it's as bad as it used to be as far as now with like all of this, the power that the individual has on social media, that if somebody is a creep, because that was the big thing, especially if you had a daughter, you're like, you're not getting into this business. Casting couch, all of those horror stories of that shit. Now I think it's I've just declared on my podcast that it's okay now.
Oh, okay.
That's what I did. I just decided. Yeah, that's how I do it.
I mean, honestly, I think the rejection, the potential for rejection is more dangerous than, I guess, partying and all that stuff. I think if my daughter was thinking of going into business, that would be my biggest fear, is just going to a business where, decade by decade, you're being told you're worthless. You're told that you're valueless on a daily basis. That's no way to live. But my parents actually...
Now, do you think that's literally said, or that's just something that gets in your head by not booking auditions?
Yeah, I mean, unlike any other business where you can kind of see, judge your own wares by how you're doing. This is a business, you go to audition after audition, or you write something one after that, and you don't really have a sense of why you're not being picked or why your work's not being made. And so you start to second guess and look in the mirror and go, oh, is it this? Is it that? Is it because I wore this? Is it because I'm too heavy? Is it, maybe I need to look more like this person or sound more like this person?
Oh, yeah. I went through all of that. I think that's the fork in the road where you can really go into a deep depression, which I did, or you can grow from it where you just go like, you know what? Fuck this. This is what I do. This is what I look like. And that's how, once I went to that mindset, this is what I do. This is what I look like. If you want to book me, awesome. If you don't, I understand. There's all kinds of beautiful people
really
out
healthy,
there.
But always, I mean, one thing I've learned from listening to your podcast, though, is that you have, and I'm not sure if this developed earlier or later, but you have a strong sense of self-reflection. And you probably don't like me saying this, but I think you're incredibly thoughtful when it comes to that, and really healthy. When it comes to
compliments are not allowed on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm sorry.
I know what you mean. I appreciate. No, I do. Nia's telling me I have to get better at doing that. So thank you. I appreciate it. But I went through in the okay. So when I started, the look was. It was just the post-'80s, but that look was still around. The sport coat with the Miami Vice colored T-shirt and the sleeves pulled up a little bit. And I remember my mother got me a sport coat to wear on stage, and I knew it would look good, but I didn't think I was good enough to wear it. So I don't know if that's the Catholic guilt or whatever. So I never wore it. She got me that.
That's great.
I didn't. It's fucking hilarious. I didn't think I was good enough to dress like a hacky fucking road comic. Because at that point it was like 93 and 94, so that look was way out and like.
Is that jacket like still at your folks' house? Or
I'm trying to think where that. I think I might have that one. That might be at my parents' house, or it was given away or something. But then the grunge thing came in, so everybody had to have their shirts untucked. And then the late 90s was a real mousse era. There was a lot of mousse in the hair.
Oh, got it.
And I remember, that was back in the days of the black and white photos, right? Mm-hmm. So I had booked a little bit of acting work early in my career. And if you're young and you book anything, I booked a commercial or something like that, all of a sudden they're just like, oh, Jesus, well, this must be the next young horse we can ride. Yeah. So they started, I had a little buzz, new guy in New York, whatever. So I would hand out, they handed out my photos. And this is back when I had hair. And with the mousse in the hair, my hair looked brown. So on some lower budget shit, they would bring me in for like the lead or something. And there was sort of an unwritten rule that redheaded males are just, you're not the lead, you're the friend. So I would walk in, prepared like the 3 scenes or whatever. And they'd come walking in, their face would drop, be like, okay, we're just going to do the first scene. And that happened a million times. And I'd be like, but I prepared all 3. No, buddy, we're just, Maybe if you read for his friend or something. And it was funny because I never quite got frustrated because I knew what was going on. I figured it out after a couple times of that happening. Like, oh, I get it. I look like fucking Ron Howard, and they think I'm not this guy. And I just always had in my head, eventually I'm going to get that part. But my goals were all stand-up related anyways, and I knew that my stand-up was going to lead to me meeting someone like you and hopefully getting a part in a movie. So that's what I ended up doing. I just focused on stand-up and stand-up and stand-up and stand-up, and then eventually I pushed through, and I think I would say Vince Gilligan was the first guy with Breaking Bad. I finally got to play an asshole.
Amazing. That was amazing.
I got to play an asshole, and what I liked about playing that asshole was I had Huel, so I didn't have to act tough.
Right.
It's like, I got this guy, so I just had to be the reasonable guy. Like, come on, man, this guy's going to get upset. Just fucking sign this thing.
That's funny that you should say that. I remember actually on set, because there's a dynamic that was in my head, and I think that's often happens. The director has something in their head, but they're not communicating it enough to the actors or whoever. And I had this dynamic in my head of what you and Steve Zissou were to each other.
Right.
And I remember the moment where you suddenly got why I thought the two of you would be great together. Like why I thought this was like an interesting comic pairing as two people at a newspaper who worked together.
Right.
One guy your character who had actually done a lot of undercover work and was kind of more tough as nails, but also maybe talking it up a little too much. And then the other guy who had never been undercover, had never done any type of investigation, and what that work would be like together.
But I was a fun guy to be that guy, like saying that he did more than he did.
Yeah.
Because I go the other way. I underplay, and I'm telling you, that comes from where I was born in the world. Growing up just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, looking the way I did with fucking orange hair and shit. The move was underplaying, self-deprecation, make fun of yourself before it was on you, make the bigger kids who can beat the shit out of you laugh so they like you, and in that moment when they're going to beat somebody up, they look at you and then move on to the next kid. That's what it was all about, was just getting it off of me. It was like, what was that game? The Wonder Ball. When you were a kid, the Wonder Ball goes round and round, just making sure when that song ended, you weren't holding
it.
Yeah, you weren't holding the ball. So,
what's funny? In my school, the redhead guy in my class was the tough guy. His name was Paris Cronin. He was the son of the lead singer for REO Speedwagon. And,
oh my God.
And he was the tough guy. He was easily the toughest dude in class. He's probably a sweetheart now, but he was a bully back then.
Right.
And so that was my association with redhead through elementary school.
That's what I love about kids who grew up in like Hollywood and LA out here. Like the people you went to fucking school. That's why I love being out here. It's not meeting the guy. It's meeting the relatives or something. Like I remember one time I went to a Super Bowl party and I met this guy. His grandfather played the guy who was in the bed with the horse head in The Godfather.
No, that's amazing.
And I was just going, you got to be fucking kidding me. So like whenever people like shit on LA going, oh, LA, it's a bunch of phonies and blah, blah. Yeah, it's like everything has, there's a phoniness to every industry, especially when there's money involved. But when you get out here, there's extremely talented people and creative people. And then you get like great like moments like that. Like I know a comic I started off with in Boston, Tony V. I don't know if you remember this. You remember those old luggage commercials? Was it the Tourister commercials or whatever? And there was the gorilla throwing the luggage around inside the cell.
I have a vague memory of this.
Yeah. He played the gorilla. So that was one of my first like cool stories. He told me that. I was on the road with him. I was like, that was you in the suit? He's like, yeah, that was me. Let's get the fuck out of here. I'm with the gorilla suit guy throwing the luggage around. So
I was doing a scoring session for a movie, and there was a stand-up bass guy. There was two stand-up bass guys, actually. One was younger and one was a little bit older. And they were doing this one solo piece for me. We were in the mixing stage, and the younger guy goes, do you even know who this other guy is? I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't. And the younger guy goes, just show him. And the other guy goes, okay. And he starts going, dun, 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 dun. And he had played the opening bass line for Nancy Sinatra's These Boots Were Made for Walking.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That was over at Capitol?
That wasn't at Capitol. This was on a different movie. We were at Warner at the time. And And it was like, holy shit. And
Yeah.
I was like, where did that come from? He's like, I was just trying different things out. We tried that and it worked. And it's like, that's one of the most iconic bass lines.
Yeah, and you just
alive.
shook his hand. You shook the hand that played that. And then every time.
And he just did it for me. It was great.
Yeah, and every time you hear it. As always, I go on tangents on here. So, getting back to the movie, where can people see this? Because that was the thing. It came
no
out.
one saw it.
Well, it came out in November, but this is the thing, though. It's not like no one saw it. It's just it hasn't been where people are going to see it. And I feel like what I'm starting to realize, as little as I know about this whole movie game, is that people nowadays, like, to get them to go out to theaters, it has to be like a big Aquaman Marvel thing, it seems, or like a chick flick, like that Star is Born.
Well, it has to be an event of some kind.
Yeah.
To get you out. Well, it's expensive. I mean, look, it's going to cost a fortune to go to the movies, and you have to have a real reason. You want to go with people, and
now the size of these friggin' flat screen TVs, it's like you really do have like your own movie screen. No one's going to be talking. You can hit pause. So this movie, The Front Runner, is a great one to sit down and watch without, the distractions of going to the movie theater, I think. And what I fucking loved about this movie when I finally saw it was how you don't do that fucking thing that I hate in movies where you lead people around like you have a point I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
And, and I'm going to, if you even have half a brain, you know what the point is as the movie's starting, and then you're going to hit me over the head with it for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Your thing is just sort of like, hey, this happened. And you can kind of, it's not, there's certain people that would have done that and been like, and if he got elected, then there's no Herbert Walker, we're not in Iraq, and all of America works out. And it's just kind of like, no, this fucking happened. And ever since then, all this other stuff has happened. And is this, one of the questions that I was left with that is, does this type of shit make qualified, probably better candidates not run because they have their priorities straight? Like, my family's more important than putting them through this shit. And does it more attract just a singularly focused, almost, I don't want to use sociopath because that's always overused, but like more of a psycho, selfish fucking person where they're going to be like, yeah, fuck, I'm not even thinking about my kids. Well, I want this.
If you look at the difference between even like Gary Hart and Bill Clinton, Gary Hart was a guy who said, I'm just not going to dignify these questions with an answer, and Bill Clinton was a fighter. And that's one of the reasons he became president, is because he's a guy who just fought back, whether that's a good or bad quality. But look, I'm not a guy who believes in good or evil. That's not why I make movies.
So that's interesting to me. So what is because I often think that, where like with religion that I grew up in, it's like if you do this, and then do this, you're going to hell unless you confess it, and blah, 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 and then you have to be sincere in your confession. But I sit there and I like, from my religion, I always think I'm going to hell. But then I look at my friends.
Right.
And we've all roughly, your friends are roughly living the same life you do. I look at them and I think all of them are going to heaven.
We're all flawed. And, and look, I love Star Wars as much as the next guy. Like, I love Star Wars, and I look forward to every Star Wars films, and those movies are all about good and evil. And I appreciate superhero films. But, so far the kinds of movies that I've been making have not been about good and evil. They've been about nuance. They've been about people who live in the middle. And frankly, I think that life is more complex than that, and you can't judge any person by one moment. But we are living right now in a time when everyone is judged by one moment. They're judged by 1 millisecond, and you say one wrong thing, and the rest of your life is kind of thrown down the drain, and we lose qualified people because of that. And
then I also love people who then pile on and use that person's fuck up is a way to show how awesome they are.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Like, the amount of people that have used the victims of sexual assault, the amount of people who have used that as a platform to show how, I hate to use this word, woke they are, and like, look, I'm on the right side of this, and I'm an ally, and all that jargon that has come out of that thing. And you said something earlier about how Gary Hart was, I'm not going to dignify that, and somebody's personal life is none of their business. I have felt that my whole life, and I still feel that. And there's been times, someone's wanted to show me something. It's just like, dude, that's none of my fucking business. Especially, like texting between two people. and somebody like somehow gets that. I always think like the story here is who got that and what a legal way they got that. Like, why did you, or anytime.
What a shitty friend they are.
Yeah. And why does anybody like, anytime anybody gets arrested and the TMZ somehow gets the mugshot, it's like, why isn't there an investigation to find out who's the cop that fucking let that thing out? And
the mugshots are public. The mugshots are actually, that's why we have like Frank Sinatra's mugshot.
I'm so dumb.
That's one of those things that is public. But you're right. There's plenty that is nuanced and more complicated, and it kind of gets thrown under the rug. And what's interesting about the Hart story and why we made the front runner is it brings up 10 different conversations. It's talking about not only the relationship between journalists and politicians and why we vote for certain people, it's bringing up all kinds of gender politics questions that have changed since that moment, and like what the idea of a whistleblower is, because Donna Rice wasn't a whistleblower.
No.
Like, it's easy to forget that there have been whistleblowers who are women who are bravely coming forward and talking about what kind of dirtbags they've dealt with. Donna Rice was a private human being. And speaking of religion, Gary Hart and Donna Rice were two very religious people and very private people who wound up in a very public moment because we all thought it was our business, when neither of them to this day have spoken about it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Donna Rice never sold her story.
That's cool. Then right there, then she's all right. She's like a mobster who never told on the other mobsters and just went to jail. Is that a bad analogy? Did I fuck up twice in a row?
No, not at all. I mean, she's complex. I mean, she's. It's interesting because I think there's probably a lot of liberals that went to, if they saw Frontrunner, they want to kind of take up the torch with Donna Rice, and then they find out that she's on the right wing, and she's actually, pro-life, and she's actually.
I love when that happens. Dude, there's so many. Do you know what blew my mind the other day? There was a story about a guy in New York who killed this pregnant woman, and she was early on pregnant, and I forget, because of some new abortion law, they couldn't get him on 2 murders. The whole thing was fucking weird, but the whole gray area in that, I know. I only have like half the fucking details here. There was something about it. She was pregnant. This guy killed her, and people were upset that because of some new abortion law.
If you called it double homicide, you'd be saying that is life in the womb, and if it's life in the womb, then you cannot have an abortion because that would be murder. And then
it becomes this whole thing like, okay, so, but if she wants to have an abortion, then it's not a life. So it's basically a life if the woman decides. Like, I was sitting there, like, the amount of like mental flip-flopping I was doing, going like, so what is going on? Like, there was such like a really, I mean, obviously it's a horrible thing that happened, but it was interesting religiously, legally, and like social media way,
how
like
politicized it got in a moment.
Like how the fuck do you navigate that minefield if you're pro-choice?
Yeah.
Okay, and you just say that's just a fetus, that's not a life. But if a guy comes in and kills somebody, then now because she wanted to keep it, then it is a life. Then it is the taking of life. Then it becomes like, well, wait a minute. So what are we fucking saying here?
Thank God I don't have to figure that kind of thing out for a living. Like, can you imagine having to be the person who has to decide that?
No, because I'll be honest with you. Like, I have my opinions on abortion, but like I always preface them with like, I have no fucking idea what the right answer is here, because I look at it one way. It's like, well, if it's not the taking of a life, but if you didn't have that procedure, there would have been another life, barring a miscarriage or something like that. So something was ended there. But then on the other side, you look at the population control and like the way we're polluting the planet and how that's affecting all these other babies that are alive. I mean, I think there's like a million fucking ways that you can look at it. So I just sort of resign it to like whatever somebody feels is the right thing to do. If they're cool with that, then I'm fine with it.
I think that makes you pro-choice then. I mean, that's choice then. Because what you're talking about is choice.
Because I wouldn't do it.
Right to kind of, but you're talking about someone's right to choose themselves, which I agree with you about. People need personal freedom.
Yeah. And I also don't like people telling me what but I don't mind. Some of it I don't mind. Like, I like that there's laws.
Oh, yeah.
I don't take it to that level.
I believe in murder, Bill. I'm sorry.
Hey, if you want to kill somebody and it's not me, I mean, who am I to say that guy didn't deserve it? No. All right, taking a little break here. It's time for a little bit of advertising. Hey, by the way, thank you to everybody who came out in Santa Barbara. in Pasadena and in Riverside. I really appreciate it. I had a great time at all of those shows. And I got to come home and sleep in my own bed. Unbelievable. All right. Here's some fucking reads for you there. Helix, everybody. Helix? There's nobody on the planet like you. You're so special. You're a warrior. You're living your best life. So why would you buy a generic mattress built for everyone else, especially a white male? Next, please mention all the talking points below. Oh, absolutely. Helix Sleep. Helix? Built a sleep quiz that takes 2 minutes to complete, and they use the answers to match your body type and sleep preferences to the mattress. Whether you're a sleeper, a side sleeper, a hot sleeper, Jesus, it's getting weird here, like a plush or firm bed with Helix, there's no more guessing or confusion. Just go to helixsleep.com/Burr, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you to a mattress while they build your robot replacement that will give you the best sleep of your life. For couples, Helix can even split the mattress down the middle, like a divorce, providing individual support. Now, if it was a divorce, she'd get the whole bed because she's used to a big mattress lifestyle, providing individual support needs and feel preferences for each side. That's right, feel preferences. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. Gross! Right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off mattress orders for their President's Day sale. Get up to $200 at helixsleep.com/Burr. That's helixsleep.com/Burr for $200 off your mattress order for their President's Day sale going on right now. helixsleep.com/Burr, HELIX. Oh, look who's here, everybody. It's old Zip Recruiter. Hiring used to be hard. Sounds like an old man talking about his dick. Multiple job sites, stacks of resumes, a confusing review process. But today, hiring can be easy, and you only have to go to one place to get it done, ziprecruiter.com/Burr. Well, old Zip sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. With their powerful matching technology, Zip Recruiter, that was the Marco Polo one, scans thousands of resumes to find people with the right experience and invite them to apply to your job. As applications come in, Zip analyzes each one and spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. Zip is now so effective that 80% of employees who post on Zip get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. And right now, my listeners can try Zip Recruiter for free at this exclusive website address, ziprecruiter.com/Burr. That's ziprecruiter.com/Burr. Zip Recruiter.com/Burr. That was the falling off the clip read. ZIPRECRUITER, the smartest way to hire. All right, movement, MVMT. Now it's time. And now it's time to move on to our all-time favorite underdog success story, evidently. MVMT, Movement Watches, founded on the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. They've sold almost 2 million watches worldwide by bringing quality designs at a fair price. Movement watches are all about looking good while keeping it simple. They don't tell you how many steps you're taking or blow your wrist up with text messages. Parentheses, you up. Oh, the old booty call on the wrist there. It'd be funny if you were rubbing one out and then that came in. It's like, oh, I don't need to do this now. They're not overly intrusive on life with notifications, text messages, emails, etc. They tell time like true classic timepieces should, looking good doing it. Movement watches start at just $95. You're looking at $400 for the same quality from a traditional brand. Talk about all the things you can buy with the save money. Let's see, 400 minus 9 is $305. Well, I didn't want to tell you what I first thought of. can't even say that. It was something that was pro-choice that you could pay 3/4 of. Movement has almost 2 million watches in over 160 countries. Get 15% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to movement.com/LZ. Movement launches new styles on their site all the time. Check out their latest MVMT at mvmt.com. Go to movement.com/Burr. Join the movement, mvmt.com/Burr. All right, let's get back to the interview here with the wonderful Jason Reitman. But anyway, so now we haven't even mentioned, where can people see this fucking amazing movie that you made with Hugh Jackman and Vera Farmiga? The two of them, I was watching this shit going, they're gonna get nominated for something. It's a fucking just a weird time in this business where a movie like yours it can slip through the cracks in cinema. But the great thing, though, is it can now be on like a Netflix or something like that.
They have a life.
And it can explode. So it's not even like, so the jury's still out as far as where it's fucked.
Available. It's on iTunes.
It's on iTunes,
get the Blu-ray,
okay.
you can get the DVD, and it's a love letter to 1970s cinema. So if you happen to be, a cinephile like me and you dig that stuff, and you dig guys like Robert Altman and Michael Ritchie, I mean, this is a love letter to their movies. There's lots of these crazy long, oneers, and
I love those shots because I feel, especially the way people edit now, where they make everything look like the fucking Bourne Identity, which works for the Bourne Identity, but I have this theory that when you edit really quick like that, it's like you're flipping through channels and it makes your brain reset. And where the long holding shots draws you in. Like I kind of learned that when I was first started doing stand-up specials. I would look at the old ones and be like, why does this look so fucking real? And everything from today looks fake. Now, part of it was HD. Because HD can get like clearer than real life. Like you got on a blue,
like a soap opera.
Yeah, like your blue sweater. All of a sudden, I'm not even listening to you. I'm like, God, look how blue his fucking sweater is. But then the other thing was the pacing of it was just bam, bam. Especially in the 2000s, it was a really bad time for stand-up specials where there was just a lot of like great comics where where I felt that the editing hurt the material. Where you would just have directors just shooting their fucking load of every camera. I mean, I watched a special, literally like a guy walking out to the microphone. The guy showed every camera he had.
Right.
We're in front of him. We're behind him. I'm at the top of the theater. I'm swooping in. The jib's my favorite thing ever. Ever. In a stand-up special. Why am I swooping in to my shit joke?
Right, and nothing makes me feel less like I'm in the audience than I'm flying over the audience.
I hate that. Yeah.
Well, we talked about the idea. I think you brought the idea up to me. Was could we shoot a comedy special on film? Shoot it like an old rock doc.
Yeah.
I mean, I made a short documentary on roast battle that they do up in the belly room.
Oh, the belly room. Yeah, that gets crazy up there.
And that was fun. We shot it black and white and made it all grainy and made it look punk rock. And that was a lot of fun.
Where can people see? Have you put that out yet?
No, I've kept that one secret. We brought it to Sundance and I played there. And if I know someone, I'll just send them a link so they can watch it because I think it's really cool. But I don't know why I've kept that one. I've kept that one tight.
But that's something you'll use.
I don't know. I just. Well, I love the roast battle. I love what they do up there. I love that it's one of the few rooms that is just honest anymore. When I go in and watch that, and it's this tight room, it only hold less than 100 people.
Yeah,
and it's Tuesday at midnight, so the only reason you're there is if you really need to be there.
Yeah,
and it's the least prejudiced room and most prejudiced room I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, I actually was there Tuesday night. Running my hour because I'm going to be doing taping a special, and it's just one of those great comedy things where I forget her name, the woman who was running the show, but she was great. But the crowd was very progressive, and that's in quotes because progressive just means think what we think, or we're going to attack you, which is not progressive. So I went up there and I was doing my shit, and oh my God, I was fucking bombing so bad for like the first 10 minutes before I kind of, got out of, I was making fun of Michelle Obama doing the arena tour, which is just fucking hilarious to me. And I knew that they were all going to be like, oh my God, she's an inspiration. So I just had to, so I was trashing her even harder. But It was just one of those things that makes the Comedy Store great and makes stand-up comedy great, where it's just like I was up there bombing and I was having the best fucking time. I was annoying the crowd so bad that there was a woman in the crowd pretending to be asleep on her friend's shoulder, like that was going to...
like that was going to enter your skin.
God, and I loved it, and I just kept... I kept talking to her to the point she had to pretend to wake up, and then I was critiquing her soap opera acting. I was like, okay, now in this take, let's do it this way. And what's funny is I've been doing this shit for 27 years. It's like, do you think that's the first fucking time someone's... I remember the first time that it happened to me, the old Boston Comedy Club, and there was these two big black women in the front row, and one of them just like put her head down on the other one. But this is the thing. I was bombing during that set too, but I was bombing in a bad way. I was bombing like I'm not funny. Where the other night I was bombing like you're not receptive to my material, and I know that, so then I'm just going to go like even harder.
I saw you do it before you and I met, and in a moment we should talk about our first conversation when you got to set, because I don't think you knew who I was.
I thought you were somebody else.
You thought I was somebody. It was kind of amazing.
I was so bad.
It was amazing. It made me so happy. You have no idea. So
I thought you were going to be like, "Why did I hire this guy? What a fucking I know.
It was spectacular. So I saw you. Do you remember Tig Notaro had a show at Largo? And you did that show. And it was very similar. I mean, it was Tig's crowd, and Tig's brilliant, and her crowd is
she's one of my favorites.
Yeah,
she's one of my favorites.
Her audience is obviously going to be very left-wing. And I watched you do this kind of set where you realized, the audience is just so uncomfortable with anything other than left-wing material, and because of that, they don't know if they're allowed to laugh. And you just came right at the audience with fearlessly and with confidence, and it was a delight. It was.
What's Tig's fans? They're not really violent, so there wasn't really. I didn't have to be too fearless. If I was opening for I don't know, a couple other comics I can think of, they have a more aggressive. Like I wouldn't be fearless in front of a Joe Rogan crowd, because I would figure a lot of them know that UFC stuff, and I would be afraid to piss somebody off in the crowd, because those guys are no joke.
With Tig's audience, you're just going to get a stern letter.
Well, they might end your career. They might start a hashtag if you say the wrong thing. I mean, I might get put on the sidelines. I don't know. It's a really weird thing, and there's definitely places that I go to now where it's just like, good Lord. One of them is New York City. I swear to God. I mean,
really,
if I go in on just a guest spot night. Mm-hmm. If I go there to do a show, it's people who know me, they know what they're getting, and then, it's actually easy. But if I go in and just pop in and do, like I will never, ever get over having a joke being groaned in New York City. It's like, I'm just thinking, like, what the fuck happened to this place? The whole fucking place, it's like a giant Bed Bath & Beyond now. It's so nice. It's so much fucking cleaner. I don't know where they put all those people, because all of the social ills that created that, they haven't solved. There's still drug addicts. There's still prostitution. I just don't know what rug they swept them underneath to, because I know it exists, but now everybody's walking around in like the fucking Truman Show, and you literally stand on stage. And what fucking blows my mind is, like, I always say, I'm 50 years old. Like, you guys should be shocking me. You guys, you're acting like a bunch of old people on a fucking cruise ship. Like, I'll be up there and they're like, But what I love about that is only if it fucks with their politics. Mm-hmm. Because since the beginning of my career, you can say that a redneck has sex with his own sister, and you will get an applause break and be carried out the fucking room. And right there, there's some sort of incest going on there. Mm-hmm. Some sort there is, right? But that's totally fine, because it's those people. You can say whatever the fuck you want about them, but then everybody over here is courageous, and they're a warrior and a fucking, I don't know what else they are.
Well, we're missing nuance right now, and we're missing conversation, and it's absolutely good and evil now. It's your side or my side, and there's no real conversation.
There's not enough Patrice O'Neil's, because I got to be honest with you, like, if that guy was still around, he was like sort of the comedy bouncer or policeman. Mm-hmm. And to the point, there was like people who wouldn't work clubs that he was at, and they would say, because he's a bully, he's a fucking asshole. And he was actually, he was just trying to make you better. And like the whole, like, I mean, I miss that guy, you know, at least once a week something will happen. I'd be like, God, I wish I could hear what Patrice would have said about that. And I can't fucking imagine what he would be thinking today with some of the shit that, and some of the people that say it, like the level of like, I mean, I hope I'm not coming off as preachy, because I would never tell another comic or anybody what they should or shouldn't be saying. You know, if you ask my advice, I'd be like, listen, this, and I always say, this is how I did it, and it worked out for me, because with our business, there is no, you start in the mailroom,
right.
And then you get promoted here. It's like, I always picture it's a giant field, and everybody's running in every different direction. And you see somebody punch through, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's the direction. Run in this fucking direction," you know. So,
well, you actually said something that I tell the young filmmakers all the time, writers and directors, and I find that when I meet young writers, directors, and I have to imagine it's the same for comics, that when you're young, you imitate the people that you admire.
Absolutely.
You know, if you looked at my first short films, all you would say is, wow, that guy really wants to be Quentin Tarantino. I get it. You love Tarantino. And after you imitate a bunch of the people that you like, you realize that you've been scared of saying something or writing something or directing something in this way that the back of your head is telling you to do it.
Yep.
And you're embarrassed of that voice. And then every once in a while you start to lean into that voice. And that's your voice. And if you can stop being scared of it and stop imitating the people you like, and actually start to grow a little bit of confidence with the way that you just naturally want to say things, that is the only way in. It's the only authentic way in. And I think it's not only for any art form, it's kind of any walk of life. There's the moment you stop being scared of who you actually were born.
You thought. I always said that every comic on an open mic walks in with their voice, and then they get introduced, and in that walk, they proceed to lose their voice, and then try to find it. Because you go up there,
right,
and it's like before you got on stage, I mean, people ask you questions, and you just answer them, or at least amongst your friends, and you're totally yourself. But that is such an outer-body experience. Oh, my God, taking the mic out of the mic stand, and then you're just totally self-conscious, and then it disappears, and then you'll spend the next 7, 8, fucking 20 years trying to find it again.
How long did it take you?
I would say I don't know. Somewhere in the 2000s, I started to get it. And then but I feel like since like 2011, 2012, I've really been me. Or maybe it's just, but you also change. So a lot of times you look back at yourself 10 years ago and you can't relate to yourself. So maybe I was being me, but that's just who I was then. I don't really know, but it was.
How many years though? All right, so were you looking at yourself and you're going, "Oh, I know who I'm pretending to be"?
Well, my thing, I started in '92, and my thing was Brian Regan, and then Dave Attell was a huge one. Dave Louie. But I thought it's funny. I didn't really like. There wasn't anything about Louis where like Louis didn't have like this cadence that got into my head. It was more his presence when he came onto the stage. I remember one time, I always tell this story. He went on at the Boston, and it was like fucking like the show was just over. It was like 2 a.m. It was fucking over. Nobody had even gotten a laugh in like 45 minutes. Everybody's just going up there bombing, and he just walked on stage. He has that booming voice. And he did this exaggerated wave, and he just went, "Hello." I can't even tell how he did it, but it was so ridiculous and exaggerated and silly that he just sort of broke them, and they started like laughing, and then he just went into his shit and immediately started murdering and killing so hard, you would have thought we all did a good job like keeping the show going.
Right.
And I remember seeing him do it, Chappelle do it, Dave Attell do it, Greer Barnes, all of these guys. And that was the big thing as a comic, being so scared of the Village in the mid-'90s, where it was Giuliani had just taken over, just parked that police truck down in the fucking Washington Square Park. But it's like, it's people like, dealing drugs out front. There was like, the shit that people saw on the way to the show. That's why the groans in New York blows my mind. Because it used to be like, what the fuck can I do to wake these people up after what they just saw on the just getting to this club? But I used to watch those guys and watch them kill after everybody bombed for like an hour, and just 2 in the morning start killing like they were 9 o'clock at night in a perfect spot. And I remember just standing back there going, how the fuck do you do that? Mm-hmm. Like, how do you get to that level? But anyways, I don't want to be sitting here talking about myself because now your next movie, you're going to be directing the next Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Right? So now you're going from this nuance thing that now you got to do this franchise move. By the way, congratulations. I mean, that's a huge one.
Well, I mean, and it's not just his last movie. It's the last 20 years of my life. Like any son of any father, I just said, I'm not going to be you. And, went out and became a Sundance filmmaker. I established myself at Sundance. I played that festival many times as short films. I established myself as an independent filmmaker. And that's who I really still see myself. And if you had asked me any time in the last 20 years, are you going to direct a Ghostbusters movie? My answer would have been, no,
I'm an artist.
Yeah, that's just not who I am.
Right.
That's my dad. You must have me confused, all that garbage. And I had an idea. I've had an idea actually for a while. It was just a
Who directed the first one?
My father.
Your father did. I'm the worst, dude. Like, all I know is sports. So your dad directed the first one.
Trust me, we start talking sports and I'll sound very ignorant. But
has that ever happened before?
Congratulations on the Super Bowl. I know that.
Oh, thank you. I did a hell of a job watching all year. Waiting for my ring to show up.
But yeah, my dad directed the first and second Ghostbusters.
So, wait a minute. Did you... Wait, and they recently made another. So this is the fourth one.
Yeah, my father produced the one that came out a couple years ago, the one that Paul Feig directed.
Okay. So has there ever been in the history of Hollywood a dad who directed the beginning of a franchise and then his son comes along later and directs another one?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question, and I probably should know the answer to this. And there's only so many kind of fathers and sons. So basically, right now, okay, you got Lawrence Kasdan is the guy who wrote Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and was actually a neighbor growing up. And he has two sons, both are directors, John and Jake. Jake most famously directed Jumanji. John co-wrote the Han Solo movie with his father. So you have that. You got.
I saw that one. I saw that on a plane. I really liked that one.
Yeah, and then Lawrence and his son write Solo. So you have that father-son thing. Other than that,
wait a minute. Now that's going to drive me. Is it Driver? Adam Driver?
Oh, Adam Driver. Well, Adam Driver's in this edition of the Skywalker trilogy.
That's the one I saw. That's the one
Adam Driver's in Force Awakens. Adam Driver's in Last Jedi. Then you got Carl Reiner and Rob Reiner, but I don't think Rob Reiner ever directed anything that his father established. I don't know. Maybe if like Sofia Coppola does a Godfather movie.
I know, but she was in one.
She was in the third one, yeah.
Okay.
So, but
when you're doing something that fucking big, like I just can't. Like, how far out do you have to start with to keep that fucking giant pizza dough in the air? As far as honestly, the crazy thing is we have no time. I wrote the film in secret with my writing partner Gil Kennan. We wrote it over the last year while we were finishing up Frontrunner. And we turned it in December, and I have to admit my presumption was it was going to be like any studio film that I had heard about where they do years of rewrites and they grind it into the ground and it never happens. And I was kind of fully prepared for this year to be a year of maybe taking a little time off and, doing rewrites on Ghostbusters. And instead, the studio read the first draft and said, yeah, go make it. Wow. So with a very short runway, we're going to be shooting... this summer. Good Lord. And coming out the following summer. And how long will it take you to shoot something like that? I don't know. I mean, it'll take us a few months, and then we'll be in post. And for the first time, I'll have set pieces with visual effects, and I'll be working with a visual effects supervisor and, visual effects houses that'll be creating ghosts and things like that. Have you ever, when you got into early on in your career as a director, did you ever get into the edit room and realize you didn't have a shot you needed, and then what the fuck do I do now? I've realized that on every single movie. I mean, you go into every single movie thinking you know how to do this job, and you get to the edit, and it is humiliating and depressing. And you watch that first cut of your movie, and I've had movies that went on to be nominated for Best Picture, and the first time I saw them, I thought, I will never get hired again. No one will ever let me direct a movie again when they see this. Yeah, Oh God.
I mean, look, the greatest.
No, because I always say as like an actor, when I sit there and, when you first start, especially as a comedian, where you exist in real time, do 20 minutes and you're done in 20 minutes, to then see how long it takes to get 20 minutes of film is something I got to get into a completely different mindset. And when I saw like all of the shots, not necessarily on your movie, because I thought I liked the pace you worked at. There's been a couple ones that I've worked in where they're shooting so much stuff. I was like, why would they do it? And then I finally just put myself into the director's brain, and I was like, oh, I bet every one of them early in their career went into the edit room, didn't have the shot, and that like fucking haunts them. So I feel like they get in there, they get everything that they want, and then they're like, then they start going, okay, all right, how could this fuck me? All right, let's do like a tracking thing and all that type of stuff. So, and ever since I did that, I kind of now, it's like, I understand the madness of it, because I was doing what most people do initially, was I was in my own head, looking at my own head, like, why isn't this going the way I would do it? Even though I don't understand what's going on. Like, I just recently did an acting gig, and for the first time ever, I don't know what happened. It all came together. Like, I got it. I'm like, okay, they're shooting the master. Now they're doing this over. Now they're going for a 2-shot. And I could kind of, and then I started being like an actor going like, oh, they're not going to be on me. I mean, they're on me, but they're not going to use this. Yeah. So kind of, make sure this one, now this is one that they're going to go
this
to.
One counts,
so make sure this and that. I never had that. I was just always out there, paging Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, you have a phone call at the front. Now, I would be doing my close-up acting on the fucking wide and throughout the whole fucking thing. And I would be working with these actors going like, this guy doesn't even look like he's fucking trying. Then all of a sudden they'd be over me, and all of a sudden I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Right? And it's just like, and I was like, what is going on here, man? This guy's like he's like a schizo or something. This last one that I just did, it all came together, and I ended up, I got it, and I finally understood what I was supposed to be doing and how I could help the director and everybody else, and I end up having the best fucking time, even though I bitched about it a little bit, not even a little, just every night, like, Jesus Christ, 12-hour fucking days, I'm a comedian. I work 1 hour days.
I found that actors generally break down into two groups, and there's actors who are 100% aware of everything that's happening around them, and then there's actors who have no idea what's happening around them. And they're both valuable.
Right.
Actors who are kind of puppeteering themselves and know where the camera is and know what the lensing's going to do. And, Clooney's like that. Clooney, who's a director himself, will literally be like, so you wanted me to bring my right shoulder in, and I'm going to look this way, and when I look, I'll give that one look. And what lens are you on? Oh, you're on a 50? Okay, great. I'll look that way. And he knows the whole thing. And then I've had actors who are equally talented, but like I've had an actress, exceptional actress, who mid-scene I had to cut, and I said, you can't stand there. And she said, why? I said, you're standing right in front of the camera. I had no idea. Literally, it was just blocking the lens. It had just stopped.
But there's a brilliance to that, because they're so lost in what they're doing. So then you have to adjust if I can capture it.
The best scene is when you have one of each. I find you have one actor who knows everything that's going on, and you get the other who's wild. And it's like you have one dance partner who's keeping time and keeping the footwork, and the other one who's just pushing them and who's just ethereal and is going to give you stuff you would have never thought of.
That's man. I probably don't want to know any more of this, because then I'll be in my head the next time I do it. But at some point, I want to hang out with you. You got to explain that lens thing, because I've heard a few actors. What are you on, a 50? All right. So you're right. Like they know like the whole thing. I'm like, I don't.
It's oddly so simple. I mean, it really is just one shows a lot and one shows less, and one has more in focus and one has less in focus, and they make you feel different things, and that's just it. So when you talk about all the things that directors,
but there's an art to all of that.
Well, you're either someone who's sensitive or not. You're either someone, and I think the same goes for a comic. You're either someone who's sensitive enough to know, oh, when I say this, it makes the room feel like this. It makes them laugh in this way versus that way. And when I use this word, it makes them laugh in this way versus that way. And over time, you get to, very rarely, but you get to someone as talented as yourself who has an opening
I'll pay you later for that.
An idea that they're going to start with, but from there on, you're figuring your way out and you're reading a room and you're sensitive to it. In the same way, a director is sensitive to, all right, if I light it this way, it'll make the audience feel this way. If I cut it this way or use this music or use this shot, all the way down to kind of minute details. And your ability to grow as a filmmaker is your sensitivity matched with kind of growing technique.
Right. Well, last question I'll ask you.
All right.
And thank you so much for coming on. This has been fascinating listening to all of this stuff.
Pleasure to be here.
So with the Ghostbuster movie,
Yeah.
I would imagine that there's this whole thing where you have to be loyal to the look, the vibe, and the fans of the previous, and then you also have to want to put like your stamp on it. So is this like a hacky fucking junket question?
No, not at all. And this is not. I'm not making the Juno of Ghostbusters movies.
Once again, I don't know that reference. Was that some Super Bowl of movies that I missed?
That's probably my most famous movie. Like my obituary will say, Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, director of Ghostbusters, also directed Juno. That will be my,
right.
That's how my obituary starts. Juno,
was that your biggest movie?
Yeah, and it was this kind of movie that we made for nothing. It was a movie that we made for like $7 million and grossed like $200 million.
Oh my God.
And,
so you made like 30 grand on that? That's how that works?
No, and I made nothing because it was my second movie and I literally had nothing on it. But the studio,
they always get you.
The studio made a fortune on that movie.
Of course they did.
They did really well. And it was the launching of Ellen Page and Diablo Cody, who wrote it, and really is the reason why I have a career.
Oh, that's awesome.
But anyhow, this is going to be a love letter to Ghostbusters.
Oh, okay, cool.
I love this franchise. I grew up watching it. I consider myself the first Ghostbusters fan. I was like 7 years old when that movie came out, and I love it. I want to make a movie for my fellow Ghostbusters fans. So it is 100%
it's in safe
love
hands.
letter. Yeah, and we're doing it in the style. Like we just did this teaser for it that we launched when we announced it. And even in that, we went back to the work files for the sound of the proton pack, and we went back to the stems of Elmer Bernstein's score. For where it says at the end of the teaser, it says like, summer 2020. We went back and found the original like physical vinyl letters that they used to create the Ghostbusters poster in 1984.
Oh my
rescanned them. Then our titles guys reprinted them, and we filmed the titles, not like in a computer. We shot physical titles with a light and smoke effect because that's how they would have done it back in the day. So we are in every way trying to go back to original technique and hand the movie back to the fans.
That's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and everybody can see The Front Runner on iTunes. Where else did you say it was available?
I mean, anywhere you would normally go buy a Blu-ray, go watch it on iTunes, and particularly if you're someone who doesn't like being told what to think, here is kind of a rare movie of nuance.
Yeah, I love it. All right, Jason Reitman, everybody, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, indeed. Pleasure.
All right, buddy.